We now move to questions for the First Minister's Office, Executive Office, and the first question is Orla Flynn.
Question number 1, please.
I call the Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I will answer question 1, 8 and 13 together. Ending violence against women and girls remains a key priority. We are delighted to say that the Executive approved the strategic framework at its meeting of the 5th of September. We will provide further information on the framework when it is brought to the Assembly and will be published along with the first delivery plan and consultation summary report.
Ms Flynn.
Thank you. I thank the Deputy First Minister for a response. If she could maybe outline what other work is ongoing to ensure that there's a whole government approach in terms of how we tackle violence against girls and women. Thank you.
First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for her question on this very important issue. I know there's been a lot of anticipation in the sector looking forward to the Ending Violence Against Women and Girls strategy being agreed and released and, of course, importantly, implemented. I also welcome the fact that the Executive considered and has agreed the Domestic and Sexual Violence strategy, which of course will complement and be supplementary as this will be supplementary to that strategy. It's important that we do have that cross-departmental work, but of course this is an issue not just for the Executive Office, not just for the Justice Department and Health Department. It is an issue for all of us. We can only tackle this issue together, from central government to local council, but also in terms of the communities, the families, the churches, the support, the schools, to identify those issues and risks and to work to tackle this issue that unfortunately is all too common right throughout Northern Ireland.
Cara Hunter.
Thank you for the answer so far. I'm aware in the South they have their first statutory agency regarding domestic sexual violence and gender-based violence, which is receiving €50 million and will have over 35 staff. Do you think, as it currently stands, that the funding in the north of Ireland is adequate or appropriate to meet the needs of victims of sexual and domestic violence?
Deputy First Minister.
So there will be a range of actions under both the Department of Health and Department of Justice's joint strategy, which was agreed by the Executive, so it becomes the Executive strategy. So there'll be a range of key actions, working with the PSNI, working with organisations, working through those departments as well. Some of those are costed, and those will be the immediate actions. And likewise, in terms of our delivery plan, there will be a number of key actions, particularly around training, support for the voluntary and community sector, to work with women who find themselves in these situations, but also to tackle and change some of the cultural aspects around the attitudes that need to be addressed. But of course, our ambition goes well beyond what the budget is. We were able to secure a budget in terms of the June monitoring round and the budget for this year, but we do want to do more. But as soon as we were able to get additional budget, we will certainly be able to increase the number of actions. There's scalability about this, but as I've said, we've got a determination to do what we can, even though it is a difficult fiscal environment at the moment.
William Irwin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Minister for her response. The Deputy First Minister will agree with me that addressing violence against women and girls is vital for a safer society. Can the Minister outline, she did mention funding there, what funding is actually available to ensure that the draft strategic framework can be implemented?
First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for his question. We were able to secure over £1 million to go towards immediate actions. Two of those key actions will be around the Change Fund and the Challenge Fund. They'll be very much working with the community and voluntary sector in the first instance, but we're very aware that great organisations that work in this area already, existing organisations such as Women's Aid, as Nexus and others, that they do vital work and they have at times struggled to secure that consistent and secure funding. So these are all issues that we will have to address moving forward. We want to support those organisations doing that vital work. We want those campaigns. We want to change those social attitudes that can lead to these damaging behaviours. Some stark statistics, like 19% of all sort of police time is spent on domestic abuse crimes now, the vast majority of those towards women and girls. So this is a big challenge, it's a big problem, and as I said, we have a determination to tackle this and to do what we can despite the difficult budget situation.
Conn Egan.
Minister for her answers so far, and I look forward to the publication of the strategy next week. Can you give any assurances that the community and voluntary sector who co-designed the strategy and worked very hard to input into it will continue to be involved throughout the delivery of the strategy?
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the member for her question. Absolutely. And I know we will say more about this next week when we officially launch the strategy. But this has been a number of years in the making, but it could not have been done without more than 50 partners working in a genuinely collaborative design process. I think the first fully collaborative design or co-design, as it's known, process in terms of policy development that we've done across any department. We've had elements of it before, but and I pay huge tribute to the amount of time, the volunteer time that those people have put in. But again, really important that we listen to those most impacted, those working with women and girls, working in education, but also those women and girls that then themselves have been touched by that abuse, the trauma and the activities of others. So I'm really pleased with the strategy. I hope others will be too whenever this is released on Monday. But absolutely they will stay involved in terms of the monitoring against delivery of this.
Councillor McAleer.
Cash to our question to the whole.
Yes, Deputy First Minister.
We are delighted that earlier today we launched our consultation on the draft programme for government. The draft programme sets out our proposed collective priorities for this mandate. A public consultation on the draft programme for government will run for 8 weeks, and we invite everyone to have their say and get involved. Following the consultation period, we can agree a clear set of priorities for action.
Mr. McAleer.
Timing of my question is very fortuitous. I note and welcome the ongoing level of cooperation and collaboration that has went into the draft PFG. Would Deputy First Minister agree that ongoing cooperation, collaboration with across all of the sectors and departments and industries, indeed civil society itself, is crucial for the delivery of the PFG?
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Absolutely. We can't continue to work in silos, not least because it can cause duplication. It can cause resources to be wasted at a time where we can't afford for those resources to be wasted. So this has to be collaborative. It has to be cross-departmental, cross-agency, but it has to be hand in hand with the organisations that roll out these programmes. It has to be done with the consent of and with consultation with the people it most impacts, not something that is done onto them by the particular departments. So we're very conscious of that. I think that's where policy development has got to generally, and that is very much at the heart of the programme for government. But look, if we are going to deliver, we need to work right across the Northern Ireland Executive to do so. And we will be looking to the committees, and we'll be looking to this House as well, in terms of helping us to shape up some of those policy proposals, but also in terms of the monitoring of that in relation to progress and to ensure that delivery on the ground.
Matthew O'Toole.
On Deputy First Minister, I asked for specifics on waiting list reductions. I'm afraid I didn't get it. So can I ask now, having had a little bit longer to look through the 80-odd page document and some of the supporting documents, can you point to a single specific new target that the Executive has agreed to in this programme for government that is measurable and the public can judge you by?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for his question because it is an important one, and I think it's a good opportunity to clarify the process. At the moment, this is a draft asking people what their view is of the prioritisation. But following the finalisation of that prioritisation, there will be, of course, a set of measurements put in place to ensure progress. There is reference to the document. He will see that towards the end of the document, to what is called the Wellbeing Framework. So these will be a set of indicators, and those indicators will be based on objective and subjective measurements. That will all be set out. It's actually live at the moment online, but those indicators may change depending on the prioritisation, and rightly so. So for each priority finalised, there will be a set of indicators. Those indicators will be monitored. Depending on the reporting mechanism, some of those will be month by month, some will be biannual or annually. And we will monitor those for progress against the outcomes set out. So I can assure the member that there will be that monitoring, there will be that assessment of progress, and there will be a budget attached. But that will follow the finalising of those priorities. I think it would be presumptuous of us to assume that those priorities will just simply remain after the consultation process.
Michelle Guy.
Speaker, it's crucial for the integrity of the draft programme for government, which was launched today, which I welcome, which is great to see that our children and young people are actively engaged in the consultation. Can you give us some detail on what that might look like and how we're going to actively engage that cohort? Thank you.
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the member for her question. Of course, we want to listen to children and young people. Sometimes we always say, of course, we must listen to them because they are our future, and they will point out quite rightly that they are our now, and the issues in this programme for government will impact on them right now, and therefore their views of it are of course very important. And we met with the Children's Commissioner, both the First Minister and myself, just last week, and we raised this particular issue that we will want to do some sectoral engagement in particular. We would encourage young people to participate in the whole range of the consultations and to jump online and to participate in that way, but we will be having particular sectoral engagements with young people and with older people, I know was referenced as well there, to listen to the very particular issues and views that they have, because that of course is an important. I also welcome the fact that we've made the decision to do a children's rights impact assessment, which has been released as part of this, and again being really interesting to hear views on that, and to make sure that we have been looking at all of the relevant areas that we ought to, and if there's any missing, then of course that is something we will address during the consultation.
Brian Kingston.
Speaker, question number 3.
Deputy First Minister.
Okay, TEO officials have developed a range of options on the future of the Urban Villages programme, along with the proposed inclusion of a small number of additional projects to the current capital plan. 58 capital projects are now complete, including 13 in North Belfast. A further 13 projects are currently being progressed, while 4 others are being explored. These projects include a range of shared facilities, parks and public realm opportunities. The principles for a community centre at Westland have been proven, and as the project develops, TEO officials, together with Belfast City Council, Department for Communities and the Northern Ireland Housing Executive, will continue to support and encourage the Westland Community Group to develop its capacity and programmes. Westland Community Group has invited us to meet with them to discuss the community centre, and I hope to take this up in the near future. We look forward to updating members once we've considered the capital plan and how best to continue with our aim of promoting thriving places and achieving the best outcome for our citizens.
Mr. Kingston.
Okay. I thank the Deputy First Minister for her answer and for agreeing to meet with the Westland Community Group. They are a very active and energetic group. Indeed, they have another Community Fund Day arranged for this Saturday, which would be an opportunity to visit. So the previous community centre was a prefab building and was itself second-hand, so since it fell into disrepair, as the Deputy First Minister will be aware, the group has been campaigning day and night for a new purpose-built centre. So the only question I would have is just to urge the Deputy First Minister and First Minister just to push their officials and the Urban Villages programme to move this project forward to actualisation in as short a timescale as possible.
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you. I thank the member for his follow-up question. Yes, absolutely. I recall speaking to local representatives and the local community group back in the Social Investment Fund days in terms of the new community centre, and I know that there's a real need there and there's a real drive to secure that new building. So I'm really pleased that we've got that confirmation that the Urban Village project will be able to support that. Obviously there's a number of processes to be gone through in terms of the business case and exactly what the centre will look like, and in supporting the community group in terms of capacity for the new centre. But I can assure the member that the first phase of the Urban Village projects is due to come to an end in the next number of years, and we want Westlands to be part of that first cohort and to be completed by that date. So I think there is an urgency now. It is in the last number of projects coming through that business case process. So certainly I will do everything that I can, and I look forward to visiting, perhaps along with the member, to the Westlands group.
Jerry Kelly.
And I thank the Minister for her answer up to now, especially around what has been done in the Urban Villages project. Could I ask the Minister to outline what has been achieved through the revenue funding in North Belfast so far?
First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for his question. The Department, as I've indicated, about the 13 capital, but of course the revenue schemes have proven to be very successful, with a very healthy uptake in relation to those. Since its inception in 2016, over 34,000 people from North Belfast community have engaged with or benefited from the Urban Village programme. 534 training courses, places and 502 workshops have been delivered. 98% of the participants reported that the project had helped them, so that's really, really good evaluation for these projects. And you'll be aware that the Urban Village project was very much about doing things differently, about really getting down within the community and asking the community about what are the challenges that they face, what are the issues that they would prioritise, and working with local communities to find local solutions to the local problems. And I think that's why it has been so successful in getting that level of buy-in and participation from the local community. So these are definitely lessons that we need to learn and hopefully move forward with in relation to the rollout of other programmes, including the new Together Build United Community revised strategy.
Mark Durkin, be interested to hear what you have to say about North Belfast.
Have any lessons been learned, I'd like to ask the Deputy First Minister, in urban villages from the Peacemakers Museum fiasco in Derry, where the Executive Office have admitted failures in due diligence, allowing this project to use and abuse the name and image of John Hume against the express wishes of the Hume family?
I think we'll move on to the next question because it doesn't relate to the original question, so I call Diane Dodds.
Speaker, question number 4.
The First Minister.
Thank you. We are delighted that earlier today we launched the consultation on the draft programme for government. We are pleased to say that it will plan to support our agri-food sector. This industry is vital to both our economy and our rural communities. We will work with our agri sector to support primary production and ensure food security, providing clarity on ammonia controls within planning, promoting sustainable environmental practices.
Ms Dodds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the Deputy First Minister. I must say I am disappointed overall that the DAERA Minister has not had a greater focus on farming rural communities in the agri-food industry. 70 to 75% of our landmass here is managed by farmers. We need them to provide good environmental outcomes. And in 2021, 4.9 billion of value added was added through agri-food. What does this say about the DAERA Minister's priority on farming? And will the First and Deputy First Minister work with us to ensure that they are included meaningfully in the programme for government?
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for, again, her important question about this really critical industry for Northern Ireland. We have a really strong farming community that we all ought to be very, very proud of here in Northern Ireland. Our agri-food products are world-leading and world-class, and that comes from, of course, the application and the hard work of so many of our farmers and across rural communities. So, of course, we need to be champions of that. I spoke very recently at the Ulster Farmers Union AGM, and I made very clear that, look, in the executive, I am here to be a champion for farmers and for our farming community and to rightfully raise the important issues that they have. We want to support them, we need to support them, and that is particularly acute at a time of global supply chain insecurity in relation to our food. We've got great local, nutritious, high quality food here in Northern Ireland, produced in Northern Ireland and produced because of our hard working farmers. And we will want to engage in the programme for government process with the rural community, with our farmers and agri-foods to make sure that the programme for government fully reflects the importance that they have for our economy.
Nicola Brogan.
Thank you, Minister, for your answers. Does the Minister agree that promoting regional balance should be a key element in the delivery of the programme for government?
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the member for her question. Absolutely, we want to deliver for everyone throughout Northern Ireland. In this draft programme for government, we want to deliver through that prioritisation, recognising that we cannot do everything in the time frame that we have and with the budget that we have. But we believe that the 9 priorities that we have in this draft document will make a really positive difference to the lives of the vast majority of people throughout Northern Ireland. We want to listen to people's views on that, but it is critically important that all of those 9 priorities benefit people equally right throughout Northern Ireland, and that we take into account the particular needs and circumstances of rural communities and those outside the greater Belfast area.
Move to the next question, and that's Paula Bradshaw.
5, please.
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you. Firstly, may I express, if I may explain that the First Minister and I took off office, we had agreed to provide the committee with a copy of the first day brief that officials had prepared before we were appointed. That brief contained references to decisions which officials anticipated would be put to ministers in the first 100 days of the new administration. These were not commitments given by ministers. There was some confusion because the member did reference this a number of times, and I'd asked about where this had come from. So it had come from a first day brief to the committee and to her as committee chair, but it was a brief that was put together before we were in post, and it is and was around what officials anticipated would be put to ministers. So I think it's important that we do clarify that, but it is, in this context we can confirm that officials are preparing advice to us on revisions to the Ministerial Code, principally to reflect the amendments made by the Executive Committee Functions Act of 2020.
Ms Bradshaw.
Thank you, Deputy First Minister. The RHI inquiry closed its offices in June 2020. Yet fundamentally 4 years on, we still are seeing a lot of outstanding works in terms of implementing its recommendations. When will the public be able to have the confidence that the recommendations with regard to the Code of Conduct for Ministers and Special Advisers will be fully implemented? Thank you.
Deputy First Minister.
This work is underway and we're expecting a submission very shortly.
I call Kate Nicholl.
Please.
Deputy First Minister.
Mr Speaker, with your permission I will answer questions 6 and 10 together. As of the 2nd of September, more than £55 million has been paid out by the Victims Payment Board to eligible applicants since the scheme opened for applications on the 31st of August 2021. The payments recognise the suffering of those now living with permanent injuries. We understand that there are concerns about the length of time it can take to process an application. Each application is unique with its own complexities, including the historic nature of much of the evidence required to support the applications. The Board is working closely with the victims' groups to keep the scheme under review and to look at ways of improving the throughput of cases. We are assured that the Board is doing what it can at the moment to minimise delays in the determination process, and we welcome the ongoing efforts to increase the pace at which applications are being processed. This is evidenced by the significant year-on-year increase in the amount paid to victims, and that trend continuing into the current year. We wrote to the Secretary of State in April and May in support of the extension to the backdating deadline, and we were pleased that the deadline has been extended to align with the scheme closing date in August of 2026.
Ms Nicholl.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thank you, Deputy First Minister, for your answer. One of my constituents has been waiting over 1,000 days now on a decision on their application for the Troubles Permanent Disablement Scheme, and every time I write about this I'm told that improvements are being made, but quite frankly he's losing hope. Can I ask what specific improvements have been made in the last 6 months, and what hope will there be for these people who are waiting going forward that the improvements will be made? Thank you.
The First Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thank the member for a follow-up question. Look, you know, my heart absolutely goes out to those that are waiting for this much-needed support. There was a huge battle, a huge fight to secure this scheme, to get the redress to be put in place to support those who are living day in and day out with the injuries from the past. And we want this scheme to work, but as the member will be aware, there are a lot of complexities with many of these cases. The scheme has been designed that you put in the application. It is not up to you to go and to collect all of the different information around all of the statutory agencies. But I can assure the member, look, we have been working with public records, we've been working with Health Department, with the PSNI, to try to support them in terms of historic records. Many of these particular incidences are historic, and it could be historic of 30, 40 plus years. But I can also assure the member that we have conducted a business consultancy service review of operational effectiveness and performance. It's a process aspect of this to take a look at all of the processes involved and to make recommendations, and that has been done, and we are continuously looking to see how we can speed that up. We've also been working with victims groups on improving the experience and the communication, because that is a big aspect as well. If it's taking so long, it is really important that people understand where their application is at and what is going to happen with it. And you will also be aware of the review that has just been carried out by the Secretary of State in terms of the operation. So it is far from perfect, it is frustrating, but we are doing what we can to try to speed things up.
Jonathan Buckley.
The Troubles Permanent Disability Payment Scheme has continued to be a vital lifeline for many people that were caught up in the absolute barbarity of the Northern Ireland Troubles. Barbarity that was brought into sharp light recently when we seen the current dig for Captain Robert Narrock in a bog in County Louth. Would the Deputy First Minister agree with me that it is vital that anybody that holds information in relation to not only his remains but the remains of the other disappeared, and I think of Columba McVeigh and Joe Linsky, that they come forward to the Independent Commission for the location for victims' remain and allow these families to have the Christian burial of their loved ones which they so rightly deserve?
First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for his question. Of course, there is a very particular cruelty to the loss of a loved one, where people do not know what happened to those remains, and they have been taken from them that really important aspect of having a burial or funeral, that opportunity to have that place that they can visit. It is a particular cruelty that ought to be addressed. And I do, of course, agree with him, and I would appeal to anybody that has information around any of the disappeared, or indeed information about any of the violent acts of the Troubles, to come forward and to give that information to the PSNI. There's still that opportunity of justice on the basis of that new evidence, and I would encourage all to come forward and to give those families and those suffering what they need and should have got, which is that respect and that closure.
Linda Dillon.
And Corlia, thank you, and thank the Deputy First Minister for her answer so far. And as you've alluded to, yes, these cases are very complex and they are historic. So I suppose two things. Firstly, could we get in writing exactly what has been done to speed up the process? And secondly, some reassurances around what is happening, given they are historic cases and many of these people are nearing the end of their lives. What has been done to ensure that those people are being prioritised in this process?
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you. Yes, I'm happy to write to the member on that, but I can tell you that the key actions that we've taken is that a business consultancy service review of operational effectiveness and performance, and of course the learning from that being implemented, exploring improvements to the overall victim journey through the capita assessment process, workshops with victims groups on improving the process, and working with NIJAC to bring the board up to full complement. And a regional model for the gathering of secondary care evidence is working well, and engagement continues with GPs and MOD to address issues around medical reports and evidence gathering. You will appreciate that once the panel reaches out to some of these organisations and asks for information, then they are unfortunately subject to the delays in terms of those teams of people. Look, every organisation is pushed in terms of resources, and that is no different here. There's generally within organisations a team of people working on retrieving those historical records, and that takes time given the sheer scale. But I welcome the fact that over 55 million has now been paid out, and we expect that to roll forward and continue to speed up given the changes that have happened.
Timothy Gosson.
My office has been contacted by victims who have lost loved ones and been denied a pension because they didn't see the body in the aftermath of the attack. So we have a situation where widows are being penalised because their loved ones come back to them in a closed coffin. Surely that can't be right, Deputy First Minister.
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for his question. So this is a scheme for the severely injured rather than bereaved, but I too have spoken to many of those widows, to those that are bereaved, and I know it is a source of frustration that there is not a scheme available to support those that lost their loved ones during the Troubles. There will be those that have had mental and physical injury due to the death of a loved one, and those people are being considered through this particular scheme. It is not ideal at all that there is that criteria, and I know, and I've been speaking to people directly that feel it is very unfair, because that is simply just not the way that psychological injury works at times. But I know that there is an appeal mechanism. I would encourage people to appeal and to look at that. But in the meantime, we need to focus on how do we support better those that are bereaved, and try to put in place a particular scheme to support those bereaved as opposed to many of those having to look at this scheme, which is for severely injured, and finding that the criteria is not the fit that it needs to be.
We now move to topical questions. Matthew O'Toole.
First Minister, Deputy First Minister, we've been sitting here for some time with the draft, and yes, I acknowledge it is draft programme for government in front of us, talking about targets. For the life of me, I still can't find very many actual binding targets or clear commitments in this document. So can I move on to a couple of the specific areas? One is Lough Neagh. A Lough Neagh action plan was published some weeks ago with some actions, but most of them non-binding. Will the programme for government, when it's finalised, commit to the creation of an independent environmental protection agency? That's one clear commitment. Can we have it now? Will it be in the updated programme for government?
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for his question. The draft programme for government contains 9 areas of priority. Those areas outline a number of key actions. It also outlines where there is not yet executive agreement, but it is proposed to bring those forward. It is important to emphasise that those issues that are not yet agreed by the executive will still need to come to the executive for agreement. There are references within each of those priorities. That is what is out for consultation. Once those are agreed, once there is a prioritisation that is agreed, we will set out how we hope to achieve significant year-on-year progress against those 9 priority areas. That will follow the consultation in terms of some of the detail that's in that draft document at the moment.
In specific and very important areas, there is not executive agreement. That's fine, but it's taken us a few hours to get to that point. Can I also ask about specifically one other specific area which is not mentioned at all in the programme for government, the draft programme for government, and that is the Language Commissioner and the associated strategy and work. Will there be, after consultation, and if the Irish language and other interested parties give very strong representations that they would like to see that included in the programme for government, will it be included in an updated programme for government? Because at the minute, it's not mentioned at all.
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It just feels a little bit like Groundhog Day, only without any of the fun or entertainment in it, but just relentless negativity. Look, you can have opposition for opposition's sake, or you can have opposition which is constructive. And I have looked to the document that he has produced, and there is significantly more detail in the document that we have produced, indubitably so. And therefore, we are asking people's views on our 9 key priorities. The member himself said just a few days ago that a good priority for programme for government should have a small number of priority areas. And we have set out very clearly that this programme for government will not reference absolutely everything that this executive and department is going to do. In relation to the issue that he has referenced, we've already made clear that we have agreed in terms of the process. We are waiting for a further submission to come up around the detail of those appointment processes. But that is now in legislation. The commitment is there, and we have spoken about that commitment to this House. There will be many, many, hundreds of other areas and issues that will be dealt with within departments, cross-departmentally, being brought to the executive over the course of the next 3 years. This executive programme for government is focusing, as he had recommended as well, on a small number of key priorities which will be measured and will have an attached budget.
Bobby Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the First Minister and Deputy First Minister for the answer so far. So, you mentioned Groundhog Day in your answer to the Leader of the Opposition. I'm going to do a bit of a Groundhog Day and ask for an update on any recent discussions or meetings regarding Mays Longkesh site.
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for his question. This is an issue that will have to be discussed in due course. We did have the opportunity to go and to speak with the board. There has been a new board put in place. That was inevitable due to the length of time that the previous board had served. But of course, as I've indicated, that anything that happens or is proposed to happen within the Mays Longkesh site has to be done with full understanding and sensitivity to the views and the needs of victims and survivors, because those are the people most impacted by some of the events on that site.
Mr. Butler.
I thank the Deputy First Minister for her answer, and I appreciate the answer because as a former prison officer who lost around 32 colleagues throughout the Troubles and over the history of Northern Ireland, that is a good answer. But in reflection in terms of, is there a commitment, do you think, to ever unlock the potential of probably what is the most significant development site in the whole of Northern Ireland?
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And of course, the site is in Lagan Valley, and I would love to unlock the potential of that site. But I can say very clearly that in the role that I am in as Deputy First Minister, personally I would never ever sign up to or agree to anything where there would be offence or hurt caused to victims and survivors, anything that would risk any glorification of any act of violence or terrorism on that site. And therefore, moving forward, that is very much the parameters in which we will operate. Of course, I would like to unlock the potential, but there are some very good things that are happening on that site. I've mentioned before the incredible growth of the Ulster Aviation Society, of the Balmoral Show. I know many of you have taken the opportunity to visit there. So there are really great activities there, but I think we need to move forward with discussion and care.
David Brooks. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like the Minister, I welcome the growing focus on growing our economy within the draft programme for government. In terms of global connectivity, what is there within the draft programme for government to encourage further route development from our airports?
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you. I hope that the members had the opportunity to take a look at the draft programme for government. They will see that there's a number of references. I think in the general sense, of course, that connectivity is so important in terms of growing our economy. And there are specific references, including looking at how to increase that connectivity and linkages, looking at the barriers to that, but also looking at, I think, some very exciting and ambitious ideas, such as looking at the extension of the pre-clearance that there currently is in Dublin, and the reinstatement and trying to get that direct route to the US back. And I think actually, the extension of that pre-clearance would encourage that. So that, of course, would have to work together in parallel and tandem. But that is something that we're very acutely aware of. The Union Connectivity Report highlighted some of these. So we will move forward with that, including into the investment strategy discussions as well.
Mr. Brooks. Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. The US has been a vital economic partner for Northern Ireland in terms of foreign investment, and also we have our cultural linkages with both the Ulster Scots and the Irish diasporas. As we approach the 250th anniversary of the United States independence, perhaps the first step, obviously, to looking at pre-clearance would be to re-establish a transatlantic flight from airport. Would you agree with me that that's a worthy goal and something we should work towards?
The First Minister.
Look, absolutely. I think it's a huge loss when we lost that route. The options are still there, and we will be pursuing all of the possibilities that are on the table to try to reinstate that. There would be no point having a pre-clearance if we don't have a direct flight. So trying to secure interest in that direct flight route would be important. But look, we have huge foreign direct investment from the US to Northern Ireland, and when we speak to US investors, they want to invest more. And actually, they raise that issue about the connectivity and the direct flight. So, I think it's something that is a priority for us in terms of trying to push ahead. And if we can secure that, I think it would be hugely beneficial both to our business but also to the tourism sectors here.
Jerry Kelly.
Does the Deputy First Minister agree that the 3-year economic business plan launched by the Economy Minister today can be a great game changer for the local economy and a catalyst for creating more jobs?
Deputy First Minister.
I thank the member for his question. As the member will be aware, I was somewhat involved in the programme for government preparations and discussions this morning and in this chamber, so I haven't had the opportunity to take a look at that consultation. But certainly in line with the programme for government, growing our economy is absolutely key. We talk very much about the prosperity agenda. We've had 25 years since the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, as amended by St Andrews, where we've been able to secure peace, if not always stability, where we've had significant improvements and growth in terms of our economy. But looking to the next 25 years, I think what we really need to focus on is that prosperity agenda. There is no doubt that happy, thriving people, communities, families, individuals, that is the best way to secure that better and brighter future for Northern Ireland.
Mr. Kelly.
I'm going weakest last night, I thank the Minister, and wasn't trying to take her by surprise. But on the basis of talking about the future, does the First Minister agree that the Executive and the Assembly parties must remain united in pressing the British Government for fair funding based on need to ensure people and the communities are supported?
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Absolutely. Like, we have made clear to the UK Government that we are prepared to play our part in terms of looking at the sustainability of our budget, to take sensible decisions in the way forward, to look at transformation in order to make our public services, our departments, our budgets much more sustainable and efficient. We will do that, but that requires investment. You have to invest to save, and that is incredibly difficult to do when the budget is as fiscally tight as it is at the moment. We will be making that case robustly and strongly to the Chancellor on Thursday when we meet her. We will be making the case that Northern Ireland requires that investment and transformation, that support for its frontline public services, and that ability for us to reach the ambition that we have as set out in the programme for government today.
Terry Carroll.
Agri-food was mentioned earlier, and of course we have to draw a distinction between small farmers and corporate farming conglomerates like Moy Park and others who are breaching environmental standards. Does the Minister agree that the $260 million announcement by the Dairy Minister a matter of days ago missed an opportunity not to have strong environmental standards attached to money going out to farmers?
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I think the member will see from the programme for government that the input from the Dairy Minister has a lot of focus on environmental issues and targets, but it would be absolutely remiss of us not to recognise the incredible important role that farmers and our agri-foods play in Northern Ireland, and that they need to be supported. The vast majority of our farmers and our producers and our agri-food companies are small to medium-sized businesses, employing local people, creating that employment, and as I've said, producing high-quality, nutritious local food. And they need to be supported, they should be supported. We should all be champions of that, and we should all be very, very proud of our agri-food and farming community here.
Carl.
Supplementary is a different matter. Minister, winter fuel payment, you said you're meeting the Prime Minister on Thursday. Are you going to tell him you're concerned about more pensioners dying this winter as a result of the cruel cut to winter fuel payment?
Supplementaries are supposed to be linked to the original question, so we'll move on to Barn Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like the Deputy First Minister if she could give any update on the proposed development of a new centre for South East Fermanagh Foundation in Lisnaskea to service the west of the province for innocent victims.
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, I had the opportunity to go down and to speak with the South and East Fermanagh Foundation just, I think, a couple of weeks ago to hear about and get an update about the centre. There's a real need there. I visited their premises. There's an absolute need. They do fantastic work working with victims and survivors, not just, of course, in your local constituency, but they have a presence now throughout Northern Ireland, including in my own constituency based in Lisburn, really supporting so many thousands of victims and survivors. So, of course, they need new premises. They need premises that are fit for purpose. I am pleased that we have agreed a victims strategy that will be coming to the executive very shortly for seeking executive agreement. But as part of that is a commitment to look at a capital fund to support victims and survivors organisations. It has been some considerable years since there's been a capital fund to work with victims and survivors organisations. So hopefully there will be some further support. And I know that the Minister of Education, because that's the site, it's still owned by the department, will be working with me and with SEF in order to try to progress this important scheme.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Deputy First Minister for that. And can she confirm that in that new strategy, the SEF capital development will actually be part of it?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, any capital scheme will of course be open for application, but in my view, the capital scheme must be capable of looking at some significant capital works. There's a number of our bigger victims and survivors groups that will have a capital need. Of course, that will be dependent on budget, and we would hope that those timescales would meet the needs. But I know that there is an urgent need with SEF, so we are happy to work with them to try to identify alternative funding options if that can be brought forward sooner rather than later. But as I said, the need is there. They've been working on this project for a long time. I know that the First Minister and the then First Minister, Arlene Foster, had done a lot of work and I went down to visit, and a commitment to the business case. So we'll look at that again and see how we can help move that forward.
Dr. Aiken.
Thank you very much indeed. May I ask the First and Deputy First Minister whether they believe that our Brussels office has sufficient resources to deal with the oncoming must say, tsunami of European rules and regulations that's coming in our direction?
20 seconds, Deputy First Minister.
Okay. We will continuously take an assessment of the needs within any of those offices, but he's absolutely right. There is a whole swathe of new responsibilities and new areas to be looked at, and there's no doubt that there is a pressure there in terms of staffing time and the capability of trying to assess all of that.
Move on to questions for the Minister of Justice. We'll start with listed questions. Question 13 has been withdrawn. I call the answer side.